Today's featured sustainable brown girl is Maithreyi Ramdas, co-founder of People Heart Planet, an online ethical shopping platform making it easier for people to discover and shop fair trade and sustainable brands. Born and raised in Bangalore, India, Maithreyi is a social entrepreneur, a passionate advocate for animal welfare and the environment, and a leader of a vegetarian and vegan lifestyle food club. Thanks so much for joining us today, Maithreyi.
Thank you for having me, Ariel.
So I always like to start the episode with asking what made you become interested in sustainability.
So, I was brought up in a city called Bangalore in the southern Indian state of Karnataka. I was brought up vegetarian, and growing up, I was always interested in environmental issues and just had a natural affinity towards animals. And it was deeper to me than just not eating meat. I'm still very passionate about vegetarianism and veganism. So, I started a food club in my condo about 3 years ago where we share vegetarian and vegan recipes. And pre-COVID, we also met in person to kind of try out new recipes and socialize with other people who had similar interests. My aim was basically to inspire myself to eat more plant-based, but also to give others the tools and resources they needed to broaden their knowledge about the ingredients and the cooking methods that went into making plant-based recipes. But I think sustainability as an issue more than a lifestyle became real to me during my college years. My city, Bangalore, was once named the Garden City of India, and we had so many gardens and parks. But that reputation started to erode over the years because of economic development and all the infrastructure that comes with it. There was a lot of decimation of all the trees. So this also led to protests by citizens to prevent the government from actually chopping down decades old trees. So this loss of green cover actually led to a lot of air pollution and water problems. And this kind of hit home for me because this whole reputation of being the garden city of India took a serious blow. And that's when I think I started to become more aware of environmental issues and sustainability. In 2010, I moved to Singapore. And ironically, I was working in the oil and gas sector. And as I worked in this industry, I also started to become more aware of sustainability issues and the looming climate crisis. And also I feel like when you start having your kids, you look at climate change from a different angle. You look at what their future is going to look like, and what sort of world you're going to leave behind for them. So I wanted to also start working a little bit more on my sustainability action. So I started volunteering for an organization called Climate Conversations based in Singapore. And it's all about sort of spreading awareness about climate change and its effects by making the conversation personal to you, by getting your friends and family involved. So that's how I met my business partner Devin as well in Singapore. And that's how the idea for People Have Planet came about. I'll talk a bit more about that later.
Yes. I like how you said at first you were interested in sustainability as a lifestyle, but then you started looking at it more as an issue.
True,
And
exactly.
there is a distinction between the two because, choosing to, shop secondhand or be vegan, that is kind of a lifestyle. But
Yes.
once you kind of start looking at like the environmental issues and wanting to get more involved in spreading the word and more of a like climate type of environmental thing, that's a whole different thing. So
Yes,
I
it's
like
a much
that you made that
larger
distinction.
issue. Yeah, it's more of
Exactly.
a social change issue than just a lifestyle, personal lifestyle.
Right, exactly. Looking at it as from a lifestyle versus issue um standpoint, I know some people feel like their individual action sometimes won't make a difference, like when it comes to corporations and governments who are typically responsible for the bulk of the negative environmental impacts. What do you think is the connection between the individual consumer choices and like a broader social change movement?
I mean, of course, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
my effort as an individual really going to make a difference in the world? A lot of people have heard the statistic that only 100 companies are responsible for over 71% of global emissions. Of course, it's no surprise that it's the usual suspects, that it's the oil and gas companies, the coal companies that are responsible. But I think the important point here is that they exist and they keep on producing what they do because of demand. There is a demand for it, so they keep on producing it. So for this change to happen and for our energy to come from renewable sources, or for our clothing to be made from biomaterials, or people to be paid fair wages, it's important that all of this will happen when consumers start to demand that too, right?
Yes.
And you probably heard of the term ethical consumerism. So we're all
Hmm.
consumers. We all consume something, and consuming in a conscious manner does really affect the people who make the goods, as well as the health and future of the planet. At People Have Planet, we talk about ethical consumerism as something that differs from person to person, depending on their motivations. And we kind of want to break down these motivations into five different segments in the ethical consumer movement today. The first would be political activism. It's also known as voting with your dollar. You must have heard that term as well.
Hmm.
It can be a way of influencing or lobbying your local MPs or your local policymakers. You can boycott certain companies, or you can buy from certain companies to make your views about human rights and climate change known. And I think this is most effective when it's part of an organized campaign, like the fashion revolution or the clean
Hmm.
clothes campaign, for example. The second would probably be value based consumerism. This describes a lot of people who don't see themselves as political or as activists, but they do want to align their values of respecting people and the planet with the brands that they want to support. These people may not be the ones, showing up at protests or rallies, but they're still a very important part of the social change movement. And the third one would probably be sustainable living. This is the most common, I would say, because a lot of people are aware of, eco-friendly products that you buy, and it's more a lifestyle and a consumer driven motivation, I would say. So especially,
Hmm.
linked to reducing your carbon emissions, your carbon footprint, and non-bio waste and things like that. Um, then the fourth one is all to do with human rights. Are the people being paid fair wages? Are they working in safe conditions? Is there any child labor involved? Human trafficking involved? So it's all about human rights. The last but not the least would be a very very also intrinsic part of this is the vegan advocacy movement. Veganism used to be only about diet, but it's actually a lot more than that now. It's about promoting a culture of respecting all life, and also understanding that you're eating vegan foods actually have a lower impact on the environment, and understanding the negative environmental impacts of modern industrial day farming. Obviously, a lot of people identify as intersectionalist, and ethical consumers can fall into more than one of these categories. But all of these motivations combined, I think, are a very strong force in the world today. No doubt we will see more and more brands trying to do better because of this shift in consumer demand. And this is only going to be good for, the planet and the people.
Yes, exactly. I definitely do see a shift with a lot more ethical and sustainable brands coming out, but also too, I have seen a lot of the top brands try to come up with sustainable lines and doing a little bit of greenwashing, where it kind of seems like they're not really doing the work overall. Like maybe they have this small line, but overall it's not not getting any better. I have seen the documentary The True Cost, and hearing you break down those different pillars.
Yeah.
um One pillar that The True Cost addresses is the human aspect,
Yeah.
where it kind of follows the fashion industry is really, taking advantage of people in these developing countries. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the human cost right now of, the fashion industry. So,
Yeah.
and the true cost, it highlights the injustices and the dangers of the fashion industry to the global south specifically. And it seems that the fashion industry is doing more harm than good there. And so I was reading like some comments under the movie on YouTube, and a lot of people were saying, well, rather than boycotting these companies, shouldn't you continue to support them because uh they're providing jobs to these people in these countries. um, so my question to you, what are the pros and cons of globalization?
Yeah, I mean, everything that you mentioned right now is true of the fast fashion brands. And, of course, we can discuss globalization for hours on end as a subject,
Yeah.
but I'll try and keep it as succinct as I can. Um, so, born and raised in a country like India, it's a burgeoning, growing economy. And growing up, I remember going to the seamstresses or the tailors to get my clothing done. We often purchased fabric that was made locally or in the country. It was made of silk or cotton, and we knew exactly who was making our clothes. And it often took days or weeks even for a piece of clothing to be, ready based on how elaborate it was. This was a perfect example of slow fashion. It was, made to order. It was on demand, crafted locally using indigenous fabrics, and really it was made ethically by people because they were paid fair wages, and we had that connection, to the people who made our clothing, which is, I think, lost now because we don't know where the clothing is coming from,
Hmm.
and the brands are often made, the clothing from the brands are made from, a different part of the world where you live from, where you live in. In
Hmm.
the last 30 years, I've seen, India also transition right before my eyes from a closed economy to opening up its economy to global players. And just like other countries like India, this has been both good and bad. I think globalization has played a part in bringing benefits like better access to global markets, to rising purchasing power, better standards of living, and in turn, it's lifted millions of people out of poverty, which can never be a bad thing. But how does one, kind of ensure that these benefits are gained without harming the planet, and
Hmm.
making sure that it's made ethically? Um, we need a large number of factories to make all of these goods that we demand, but how do you ensure that the emissions from these factories, for example, do not increase air pollution? It does not harm the people who live in these communities and work in these communities. And how do you ensure that the people are paid fair wages, they're not coerced into working 14 or 15 hours a day with no day off, and they're able to provide basic needs for their family? I think globalization often brings about a debate between free and fair trade, but we really believe that trade can be both free and fair. Companies can trade freely, ensuring that the people are treated fairly and their piece of the planet is not exploited for another country's benefit. And the most important and amazing part of globalization is that it's made all of us global citizens, so we can all work together, to make this hope of, a fair, prosperous, and safe world a reality.
Yes. Wow. That's a great way of putting that. I like how you mentioned that it's not just, how the workers are treated, but the fashion industry does also have a big impact on, climate change with messing up water sources, adding pollution and whatnot. So yeah, that's definitely something that should be taken into consideration. So I kind of want to talk more about your company, People Heart Planet, because you are creating a resource for people to be able to shop more ethically and to shop according to the pillars that you mentioned earlier. Can you tell us more about People Heart Planet?
So People Heart Planet came about, as a necessity. So we wanted to shop fair trade and sustainable brands ourselves, but there wasn't an easy way to do it. We found ourselves, we were spending hours and hours doing all this research, compiling lists of all the ethical brands, and we realized this information could be so useful to other people if it was published and made available. And then we realized that even better than just a brands directory would be, an actual shopping site where people could see all of the products and all of the brands in one place. And that's how People Have Planet came about. We are an online platform to discover and shop fair trade and sustainable fashion and lifestyle products. We vet every single brand that we feature to ensure that they are fair trade or sustainable or both. Some brands are also vegan and organic. Our motto is love people, love the planet, shop fair trade, and sustainable. I think love is the only thing that can truly transform the world for the better. Love for humanity, love for others. We really believe that people are motivated by goodness and love. And that's
Mhm.
why people want to buy ethical. And that's why we built People Have Planet.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, it can be so difficult trying to find brands, that are ethical and sustainable. And then too, sometimes when I'm shopping for, a ethical or sustainable brand, you see all these different labels like organic and ethical, sustainable, fair trade. How do you, is there one that's better than the other?
Well, I don't think so. Of course, trying someone who's
Mhm.
a proponent of ethical fashion, it does involve, ethical is an umbrella term for all of these things, but sometimes it can also mean just fair trade. It can even mean buying locally, is also described as ethical. So, you have to dig deeper to find out what the brand's commitment is towards these, motivations.
Yeah. Are there, when you're vetting different companies, are there certain things that you look for?
Yes, absolutely. So when we look for the brands, that we want to include on the platform, we first look at, what are their commitments towards the people, the planet, and what are they actually doing. We break it down. We look at their fine print. We look at, their sustainability reports. And also, of course, what do they say that they're going to do to be a better company? And some of these could be, fair trade, for example, could mean two meanings. Fair trade certified, which means that they have to meet these 10 criteria that's outlined by the International Fair Trade Charter, which all have to do with, things like climate change and gender inequality and social and economic injustices. But fair trade as a general term also means that, they respect the people by paying them fair wages. They allow workers to meet their, basic needs. And of course, making sure that there's absolutely no child or slave labor, ensuring they work in safe conditions. And when you come to the sustainability aspect, fashion brand recognizes that every part of their business has an impact on the environment. A big part of their overall mission and ethos, in addition to making a profit, is to reduce the environmental footprint in both in terms of carbon emissions and waste. So this means, examining the whole life cycle of the product, from actually sourcing the raw materials to designing it, producing and manufacturing it, warehousing and storage, transportation, the final sale, the use, reuse, and recycling of the product. There are a lot of brands, that have different targets and goals. So, but the bottom line and the shared goal should be that they prioritize environmental responsibility, and never put profit over the health of the planet. Some of the other strategies that they use is, water reduction or reduction of the use of, finite natural resources, or reusing renewable energy in their production, carbon offsetting, or giving their customers a choice of recycling their products with them. And also using low impact dyes, organic materials, vegan materials. So there are a lot of things that the brands can do to ensure that they're doing better. And when we come to vegan brands, of course, vegan means that they use absolutely no animal products or byproducts in the production. And these brands go way beyond just cruelty free, because cruelty free only means that, there's no testing done on animals, in the general
Mhm.
definition. But this is much more than that. They ensure that absolutely no leather or fur, silk, cashmere, or any skin or bone is used in the production of the product. And when we talk about vegan materials, I also want to make a point that you have to dig a little bit deeper into checking what the vegan material is made of, because sometimes a lot of it is plastic based. So we do need to
Mm-hmm.
do more due diligence, and that's why we exist. We do this research. We ensure that they're using sustainable materials or biomaterials, like cork or recycled rubber, tree bark, sometimes pineapple leaf, you must have heard of Pinatex and apple
Mm-hmm.
fibers. There are some very innovative materials, that brands use. And the last
Yes.
category would be the organic brands. So, in the broad sense of the term, organic just means that they don't use any pesticides or synthetic fertilizers and genetic modification, in the production of the raw materials. And usually it refers to the raw material that's used. And largely, the majority of the clothing that's made in the world is made from cotton. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, organic cotton is better for the environment. And organic cotton can be certified by the GOT certification, the Global Organic Textile Standards certification. And this certification can only be gained if a minimum of 70% is organic fibers, and only then can it
Mm-hmm.
become GOT certified. um, of course, 90% of the cotton all over the world is not organic. It's GMO. It's genetically modified to yield better crops, and yield a higher quantity, or being pest resistant. It might all sound nice, on the surface, but it's been linked to the breakdown of biodiversity and the depletion of the nutrients in the soil. So GMO cotton also uses a large amount of water, and it has a significant impact on the finite resources that are available to us. So I think more than just understanding these terms, it's important to dig deeper to see what these specific companies are doing in order to meet, these sort of fair trade or sustainability criteria. Just because they say that they're sustainable or ethical, it doesn't mean that they really are. And you brought about this, concept of greenwashing these days. They're doing it because
Mm-hmm.
they want to, show that they're sustainable, but they may not be. So, of course, you can't be 100% ethical or 100% sustainable, but there is a clear difference between, your high street brand or a fast fashion brand and the brands that we include on People Have Planet.
Yes. Yes, I will say whenever I'm shopping for, new clothes or something and they use the term sustainable or ethical, I do try to look for some type of certification, be it 1% for the planet or, carbon neutral or, something like that.
Yes.
But if I'm, scrolling through a website and I don't see any certifications, it does, kind of make me a little bit weary about purchasing from them. Um, so also too, when I see these ethical brands and whatnot, and I see that their clothes are made like in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, that also makes me a little wary. But I do know that there are ethical factories and stuff. So, is there any way for consumers to know if the product was made in a ethical factory?
Well, the simple and short answer is that you can't know, unless you
Mm,
do the due diligence required.
yeah.
Sustainable does not mean fair trade. And this is exactly
Right.
why we launched People Heart Planet, because it takes a lot of time to do this research and do the diligence required to read the fine print and the sustainability reports, to kind of ensure that these brands are doing what they say they're doing. And our lives are busy, so people who care, they don't have the time to do the research. And of course, there
Mhm.
are lots of resources nowadays, like blogs and even marketplaces that are sustainable and fair trade. But there isn't one shopping platform that made it easy for people to buy from these brands. When we came up with the idea of People Have Planet, there wasn't one ethical shopping platform, not one. So now we aren't the only ones, of course. in this space. There are lots of players, but we're happy to be part of a collaborative effort to kind of make this movement grow and make a change in this world together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having more sources, especially for ethical and sustainable options, is always better. So, yeah, I think it's great what you guys have created. Um, so when for on your website, do you just have clothing or do you have other products too?
Yes, so we have fashion and lifestyle products. So we have clothing, we have bags and shoes, we have accessories like jewelry, and we also have phone cases. So I encourage you to go and check out the website and see our very very wide collection of products that we have in the fashion category. But we also have lifestyle products like home decor, your sheets and other home and lifestyle products. So this is what, yeah, we're focusing on at the moment.
Wonderful. Is there anything that you're looking forward to expanding into in the future?
Of course, we're right now just focusing on building the site, having as many products as we can from these brands and kind of improving our brands directory as well. We have about 120 brands that people can choose from. We want to improve that resource as well, along with having all of the products on our site. So that is our current focus. But in the long run, of course, maybe we would like to diversify into other categories. But yeah, we haven't really planned to do that as yet. But yeah, right now it's only going to be fashion and lifestyle products and improving
Okay.
the resource that we currently have.
Right, right. That's great. Well, I think that it's such an amazing resource to have to just, it's like such peace of mind, being able to have all of these brands in one place, knowing that you've done your due diligence. Cause like you said, I don't have the time to, email everybody and follow up because I'm sure a lot of brands, may take a while to respond and whatnot. So yeah, it's, great that you guys are doing that. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
um No, I just want to say that this was born out of necessity, and I know that a lot of consumers now want to buy sustainable, and they want to figure out how to identify these sustainable brands and fair trade brands. So I would really encourage people to shop with peace of mind when they come to People Heart Planet, because like you said, we have done the due diligence and we have done the research required to include these brands on our platform. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I want to stress
Yes.
on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you are absolutely right. So, my final question is, what does it mean to you to be a sustainable brown girl?
This is an interesting question for me.
Mhm.
I've talked a lot about this with my partner as well, Devin, my business partner. And, it's not in regard to this interview, but just in general terms, because she's white, and but she's the mother of a child that's half white and half brown or Indian.
Mhm.
So, being brought up most of my life and living most of my life in a part of a world that is not majority white, I never identified myself as brown. I know, of course, that I'm brown. Like, more than 80% of the world is some shade of brown. So, it's just that I wanted to make a point that brown people have always been sustainable in their lifestyles.
Mhm.
Before this globalization came about and it disrupted everything, their traditional lifestyles have always been ethical and sustainable. Um, but I do identify myself as Indian, and as someone coming from a country that was colonized for close to 200 years, and is still to some extent paying the price for it. It's I understand that when governments and corporations kind of take advantage and exploit other countries for their own benefit and gain. And I very much want to see a fair trade movement and a climate change movement which is led by the very people who are affected by these issues. The indigenous and the brown people. It can be climate refugees, It can be, people whose lands have been ravaged by the corporations for profit, the garment workers. These are the voices that need to be amplified and really put at the forefront of this movement.
Yes. Very well said. Thank you so much for your perspective. I never, have had anyone say come at it from that standpoint who hasn't come from a country where it, mainly I talk to Americans pretty much. So being brown in America is different from being brown in India.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Most welcome.
So tell everyone where they can find People Heart Planet.
So, People Have Planet is an online platform. You can find us at www.peopleheartplanet.com. You can also find us on social, on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Our handle is People Heart Planet. So do check us out, and we'll be happy to hear from you. You can DM us, you can email us, you can send us a message. We'll be really excited to get in touch.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great talking to you.
Thank you, Erica.
And yes, please go visit People Heart Planet and do all your shopping through them. And yes, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.